Hi, this is the Ashley Corinne, and um, I'm I wanted to make this video about a dream that I had, and it was a very interesting dream. So, in the beginning of this dream, I was in the back of a truck. I was in the back of this really shitty truck with I was sitting in the bed, but it was covered, so it kind of had this cover over it with windows and shit. And I was sitting in the back, and I felt like what it felt like to me was I felt like I was a Mexican immigrant in the back of a shitty Toyota that was, that they were taking me across the border. That's what it felt like. And there was 3 other people in the back of the truck with me. There was 2 adults and 1 child. But the thing about these people is that they looked like puppets. Excuse me. They looked like puppets. And they had these oblong heads that had these really weird, creepy faces on them, kind of like something out of a Tim Burton movie, but creepier. And I was sitting at one side, and there was the 2 adults. There was one sitting across from me and one sitting against the tailgate, and then the child was laying on the floor, or laying on the bed, I guess, in front of me, and they were like. They weren't crying, but when a kid is sick or something, and they're and it was fucking creeping me out. Okay, it was creeping me out, and I was like, fuck this. And so behind me there was this window that was big enough for me to crawl through. And so while the truck was driving, I just said fuck it, and I reached up and I pulled myself up, and I fell out backwards onto the road as the car was moving, and I kind of landed, and it didn't hurt. I just fell out, and I stood up, and I was standing on the street. It was a city street, and I was watching the truck drive off toward the city. So I was in the suburbs. I was in the residential district of the city, and it was twilight, by the way. It was twilight. It was night, but the sun had just gone down, so there was still just a little bit of light in the sky. And I watched the truck, and I realized that it was going towards the city, and I saw city, big skyscrapers and shit. And that's where it was going. That's where I had been going. And I was like, I'm not gonna sit in this fucking truck and get all freaked out by these weird people. I'm gonna actually just walk. I'm just gonna walk to the city. So I started walking up in this neighborhood, and there was this house. It was this Gothic style, ornate house, really beautiful, beautiful in a dark Gothic way. And there was this, from the front of this house, there was this sort of what looked like almost a greenhouse, but it was just jutting out from the front of the house. And I figured that's the entrance to the house, and so I wanted to go in the house and check it out and see what was going on. And I walked up, and when I got up to it, I realized that half of it, maybe about belly level, was it was all stone, and then the top was glass. So and there was a little door, and I opened it, and I was like, well, it seemed like a sort of Alice in Wonderland thing. I opened it, and I'm like, this is big enough for me to crawl through. I guess this is how they get in. So I crawled up, and I was crawling through there, and I got to a point about halfway through where I saw a skull and crossbones that was made out of stone, that was level, on the flat level. And I looked at it, and I looked down, and I was like, holy shit, this isn't an entrance. This is a sepulcher. And so I was like, okay. And so I crawled back out, and I got down, and I closed the glass door, and I walked around the sepulcher, and I could see the house had big windows, and so you could see inside, and it was all lit up inside, and it looked like the people inside were having a casual party, not like a raging party, but just like a get together with a few friends. They were all walking around holding drinks and shit. But the thing is, they were all gothic. They were all dressed in black, and I'm talking like Tim Burton style, like fucking black, really beautiful gothic clothes. But when I looked at their faces, I thought they were wearing masks at first. But then when I got a closer look, and they didn't notice me, but when I got a closer look, I could see that they had these like really dark, like demonic, ghoulish faces, and I was like, ugh. And I realized those weren't masks; those were their faces. And I was like, I'm not in Kansas anymore, and so I like backed away. I was gonna go to the house and like open it, like try and get inside and see what was going on, but once I saw what they looked like, I was like, screw that. I just got a bad vibe about it. And so I backed up, and I was thinking, where am I? And so I started walking up the street. I was walking towards the city, which was my ultimate destination. And I heard this guy, someone walking behind me, and he was talking to himself. It seemed like some crazy person or something. And I looked around, I turned around and I looked, and there was this guy. He just had, jeans and a t-shirt, just really regular, and he was bald. He was like totally bald on his head. And he was like really freaked out. And I thought he was on drugs at first. And he's like, I don't feel a pulse. I don't feel a pulse. And he noticed me, and he looked at me, and he's like, do you feel a pulse? And I was like, I don't know. And because I had stopped to look at him, and I just stood there, and he walked past me, because he was walking in the same direction I was walking. And when he walked past me, and I could see the back of his head, he had a hole in the back of his head. And I was like, holy shit. I'm in the land of the dead. And I was like, am I dead? I guess I'm dead. And I was just sort of like, whatever. And so I started walking up to the city. Now, I'm going to end that part there. Leave you on a cliffhanger. But I'm going to continue this. This is a very interesting dream.